Every year in New Zealand, stoats, rats, and possums destroy 25 million native birds, eggs, and chicks. So in 2016, the government announced the most ambitious conservation project in history to completely eradicate all predators by 2050 and simultaneously plant 1 billion trees. But why trees, if the problem is predators? Something strange happened very quickly. The more trees they planted, the faster the predators began to disappear. And nobody expected these two things to be connected at all. In 2016, Prime Minister John Key announced the official goal to completely eradicate the most dangerous predators by 2050. In parallel, in 2018, the government launched the Billion Trees program. Most people treated these two programs as separate, one about nature, the other about climate. But between them lies a mechanism that changes everything. All of it is explained by the past. When New Zealand separated from Gondwana 80 million years ago, land mammals had not yet appeared on Earth. The island drifted on its own, and nature here took its own path. 72% of native birds and 81% of native insects exist only here and nowhere else. The only native land mammals are two species of bats, each no larger than a thumb. There were no cats, rats, ferrets, or stoats. There was nothing to hide from or flee. And so the birds forgot how to fly. The kakapo is the heaviest parrot in the world. It can weigh up to 4 kilograms, it is nocturnal, it climbs trees, and it often leaps downward with its wings spread like a parachute. It does not fly because for millions of years there was no need to. The takahe is a flightless rail the size of a duck, and it is vivid turquoise. The kiwi has no wings at all, a dog-like sense of smell, and is perfectly adapted to the dark understory where no predator had ever existed. Then humans arrived. Polynesian voyagers landed around 700 years ago. They brought rats in the cargo holds of their vessels. The rats ate the eggs. Maori hunted the birds. 9 species of moa, giant flightless birds, went extinct within 100 to 150 years of first human contact. But the true catastrophe came with Europeans in the 18th century. They brought cats, 2 further species of rats, and stoats to control the rabbits they had introduced earlier. Between 1883 and 1892, 7,838 stoats and weasels were brought into New Zealand. This is documented in research by Professor Carolyn King of the University of Waikato, who spent years recovering government contracts and ship logs from that era. The animals were released onto pasture land, but they headed into the forest. A stoat weighs 300 grams. It will squeeze into any burrow, climb any tree, slip through any gap. It will not hesitate before an egg, a chick, or an adult bird that has never in its life encountered a predator and does not know it should run. 95% of kiwi chicks hatched in areas of stoat activity do not survive to adulthood. And alongside the stoats, possums were introduced from Australia in 1837 for the fur trade. By the 1980s, their population had grown to between 50 and 70 million. Every night, possums consume approximately 21,000 tons of vegetation. They return to the same tree again and again until they have stripped it bare. In the westland valleys of the South Island, more than half of all upper canopy trees had died within 15 to 20 years of possums arriving. Connect these two facts and you see the mechanism of catastrophe. Possums destroy the forest, birds lose food and nesting sites, and the forest stops regenerating. Stoats and rats consume whatever survives. Every year, predators destroy 25 million native birds, eggs, and chicks. If you think that's somewhere far away, consider what happened in Yellowstone, where without wolves, the elk population grazed all the riparian vegetation down to nothing. Riverbanks began to erode, and rivers grew shallow because the roots of bankside trees no longer held the soil. One predator was removed there, and the forest responded. In New Zealand, humans added 7 at once, and the forest began to die. And if the forest dies, there is nowhere for the birds to return to, even if the predators are removed. That is why billion trees and predator-free 2050 are two halves of a single solution. The connection between them is the food chain. Possums destroy the upper canopy trees. The forest opens up, rats gain more sun-exposed ground for breeding, and stoats gain more rats. A University of Auckland study found that restored forests begin attracting rats and possums at around 9 years, when the trees have reached a certain height and structural complexity. A forest without predator control attracts predators. Predators without forest find birds faster. Every several years, beech trees produce a massive seed fall, trillions of seeds blanketing the understory. Rat populations explode. Stoats follow the rats. Predator numbers multiply tenfold in a single season. When the seeds run out, these hordes turn to birds. In the late 1990s, one such season wiped out the last population of mohua in the Mount Stokes Range on the South Island. Completely. Entirely. Trees and traps therefore have to work together. One without the other does not work. 2018, the first year of the program. The government announces its goal, 1 billion trees by 2028. In the first year, 91 million trees are planted. The figure is impressive until you look at the composition. Of the 91 million, only 12% are native species. The remaining 88% are commercial radiata pine, the same variety grown for timber. Scientists raise the alarm immediately. Radiata pine does not recreate the structure of native forest. It does not feed native insects. It does not attract pollinating birds. It does not build the mycorrhizal networks that native trees need. And worst of all, when the plantation matures and becomes sufficiently dense, it will begin attracting the same rats and possums. At the same time, predator control begins. The first large-scale aerial 1080 drop over the beech forests of the South Island ahead of an expected masting event. The result, 98% of possums in the coverage area are destroyed in a single season. The birds receive a window, one season without predators. That is enough for nesting. But within a year, the predators return from the periphery. The problem becomes clear. An isolated operation produces no lasting result. The government begins rethinking the tree program. The Grants Fund, a smaller but targeted part of the program, is reoriented toward native species. By 2024, 81% of plantings funded through this scheme are native, but that accounts for only 40 million of the nearly 800 million total. The overall proportion remains badly skewed. What happens where native forest does grow back? A study of 25 restored urban forests in Hamilton and New Plymouth identified a clear pattern. Young forests up to 9 years old attract small birds, fantails, silvereyes, and gray warblers. Then, as the canopy closes and the forest becomes more complex, tui arrive, nectivores that need the flowering of native trees. Then caribou and kingfishers arrive, which need large trees for nesting. Each threshold of complexity opens the door for a new species. The best documented case is the Hinewai Reserve on the Banks Peninsula. In 1987, 109 hectares of degraded farmland were purchased. Botanist Hugh Wilson applied minimal intervention. He removed livestock, excluded fire, and let nature act on its own. Within 10 years, native trees had grown up through the gorse. The reserve now covers 1,250 hectares, contains 330 species of native plants, 47 waterfalls that have returned, and birds, including bellbirds, tui, caribou, riflemen, and tomtits that had been absent for years. But Hinewai operates without large-scale predator control. Wilson was able to remove feral goats in 1999, but rats and stoats remained. That is precisely why the most vulnerable birds are still not there. This is the essence of the parallel programs. Where there is forest without predator control, resilient species return. Where there is predator control without forest, birds survive but have nowhere to spread. Where there is both, something third occurs. In Miramar and Wellington, all 4 target predator species were removed, and active native vegetation restoration is underway along the slopes in parallel. The result was a 71% increase in native bird sightings. 1 tui in the late 1990s, 146 today. The Wellington green gecko was recorded for the first time in a generation. A species that had not returned appeared for the first time in the documented history of this place. The new AT-220 traps kill up to 100 animals between service visits and send data to a screen in Wellington. The Cacophony Project thermal camera with built-in AI distinguishes a stoat from a bird in darkness by silhouette and body temperature. In November 2025, feral cats were officially added to the target list. They had been excluded for years due to pressure from pet owners. As of 2025, DOC controls predators across 1.8 million hectares, roughly 20% of all public conservation land. That is 7% of the ultimate goal. The program cannot be reduced to government and drones. More than communities, 5,000 groups and communities participate in it. More than 1,500 of them maintain digital trap records and share data through mobile apps. In Dunedin, a city the size of Tucson, more than 1,000 volunteers check traps in urban neighborhoods every day. In one Wellington neighborhood, a single volunteer personally destroyed more than 100 predators over 2 years and says that after that, birds returned to his street. Back to the kakapo. 1995, 51 birds, 20 females. The strategy, move them all to predator-free islands and wait. The islands proved insufficiently clean. Rats remained, eating eggs and chicks directly in the nests. Of 12 chicks hatched in the 1990s across 3 islands, 3 survived. The population continued to fall. Then something was done that no one had done before at this scale. The islands were completely cleared. Rats were removed from Codfish Island in 1998. Possums and wekas earlier in 1986. And everything changed. Today, the kakapo numbers 236 birds, nearly 5 times the 1995 low. In 2022, the population reached 252, the highest in all documented history. Since then, 16 birds have died from disease and old age, but the 2026 season promises a record number of chicks. Every bird carries a radio transmitter. Every genome has been sequenced to avoid inbreeding and pairings. In 2023, 10 kakapo were returned to the mainland for the first time in decades, to the protected Maungatatari Sanctuary. The islands are full. The 3 main island sanctuaries have already reached carrying capacity. Kakapo cannot simply be released onto the mainland, a stoat would take them that same night. And at this point, trees become not merely a decorative element of the plan, they become a condition for the species' survival. Native forest is a structure without which the birds cannot exist. The Department of Conservation documents it. Endemic birds, particularly those that nest in hollows or on the ground, are the most vulnerable to predators and the most dependent on large tracts of native forest. The North Island kokako, for example, will not cross open ground wider than 500 meters. If there is no forest corridor between protected areas, the bird is trapped, even if every predator has already been removed. The takahe is another flightless bird, vivid turquoise, almost mythical in appearance. In 1948, it was considered extinct, until ornithologist Jeffrey Orble found a small population in the Murchison Mountains. In 1981, it reached its recorded low point. In 2007, a stoat outbreak cut the population in half in a single season. In 2016, 300 birds. In 2023, 500. The figure of 500 sounds like a triumph, but ornithologists are direct. This population is stable only as long as there are traps, there is poison, and there are people patrolling every kilometer of the controlled zone. Remove the support for 2 years and you return to decline. Here is a paradox that no initial model anticipated. Of the 7 interim targets the program was supposed to meet by 2025, 1 has been achieved. Landcare Research wrote plainly in its 2025 report, "No attempt should be made to deploy the program at a national scale until the research phase has demonstrated that eradicating predators is possible for at least 1 species on the mainland." 9 years after the start, that proof does not yet exist. The program has not restored a self-sustaining ecosystem. It has replaced it with itself. New Zealand is keeping the survival of its species on expensive, technologically complex life support. Ecologist James Russell of the University of Auckland framed the dilemma starkly. He said, "If we decide not to kill mammals, we are effectively deciding to let birds die. It is an ecological version of the trolley problem, with no right answer. Now look at what has already happened." In 1994, more than 1,700 farm herds were infected with tuberculosis through possums. In 2025, 15. 30 years of predator control changed not only nature, it saved the country's dairy and meat industries. On Waiheke Island in the Hauraki Gulf, residents now wake up to birdsong and the calls of kaka, a bright green parrot not heard there for decades. In Miramar and Wellington, the Wellington green gecko has appeared, a species perhaps unseen there for several generations. One tui in the late 1990s became 146 today. A few city blocks, a few years of predator control, some native trees, and the city began to sound different. The kakapo, 51 birds in 1995, now numbers 236 and has entered a season that scientists are already calling potentially the largest since record-keeping began in 1977. The takahe, considered extinct in 1948, numbered 500 in 2023. In the forests around Dunedin, where 1,000 volunteers check traps every day, bellbirds have returned, birds that local residents had not heard since childhood. The challenges are real. 7% of the ultimate goal after 9 years. 88% of trees planted are exotic, not native. Of 7 2025 interim targets, 1 has been met. The program is keeping birds alive, but it has not yet restored an ecosystem capable of sustaining itself. But here's what matters to understand. 50 years ago, nobody believed that islands could be completely cleared of predators. Today, more than 300 have been. 10 years ago, nobody believed it could be done in a city. Today, Miramar. Brent Bevan, a program manager at the Department of Conservation, said in 2025, "Even if complete eradication turns out to be unrealistic, we will still have tools and technology that did not exist before. We will have thriving wildlife at a scale that has never existed. There is no losing here." On Codfish Island in the darkness, a kakapo is booming right now. It knows nothing of the program, the traps, or the billion trees. It is simply doing what this species has done for 30 million years. 30 years before this, 51 of them remained. What is happening in New Zealand is the longest and most complex conservation experiment in human history, and it is producing results that nobody expected at this scale or in these places. Thousands of kilometers from Codfish Island in South Korea in 1953, after a war that had destroyed 65% of all forest cover, one government made a decision that looked equally hopeless. They planted 11 billion trees over 50 years. What happened afterward, to the rivers, the farms, and the species diversity, continues to this day to force scientists to revise their baseline models of ecosystem recovery. But that is already a different story.